What happens when someone is pushed against a wall? They lash out and attack you. I think that's exactly what describes the mainstream media after the election that seems to have lost its grip on reality, trying and failing to rile up America against Donald Trump. And there's no one that's a bigger enemy of the MSM today than Joe Rogan. So listen to what he said to this conversation with Dave Smith, because it's starting to sound truer than it ever has.
The ramification is that, look, they did everything they could to tell you this was a Nazi, this was the end of democracy. Yeah. He incited an insurrection, and the American people said, we already get that you're full of shit.
They cried wolf.
Yeah. Too many times.
Way too many times. Way too many times. The Joy Reid stuff was working for Trump. It was working for Trump. When she's calling him a right-wing dictator, comparing him to Mussolini and Stalin. And then when Oprah said that if Trump wins, you may never be able to vote again. That is
it's just so ridiculous.
The craziest thing when you go back and watch him on her show where she was encouraging him to be president.
Yeah.
You ever see that?
Yep. I saw it, and then I saw when you played it fairly recently.
Hey, Oprah.
Yeah.
What changed?
Yeah, that's right. Well, here's what changed.
All of a sudden,
he became the guy who wasn't just funding a lot of politicians and being like a famous guy, and he became the guy who was calling all of them out and threatening to drain the swamp.
Yeah.
That's really was his crime.
First off, I love Dave Smith, and doesn't it tell you something? Donald Trump has been in the public limelight for decades and is mostly lean Democrat, especially given his liberal lifestyle. For those decades, Trump was a bit of a poster boy for this flashy kind of progressivism in the media, and of course faced none of the heat that he does now. But at the same time, I think it's safe to say that Donald Trump has become the first person against whom the entire mainstream media machine finally lost, because its relevance and public appeal faded away over the last 8 years. And guess what? The likes of Joy Reid, Oprah Winfrey, and Rachel Maddow have no one but themselves to blame for it. They've lied so many times in hopes that something would stick that they've eroded any trust they had left with the people, and public trust is the most valuable currency in the media. Joy Reid said stuff like Trump wanting a national abortion ban or that he would literally deport U.S. citizens, which is blatantly false. People like Rachel Maddow have spent entire media campaigns back in 2017 trying and failing to be the first to establish a Russian connection to Trump's victory. And that strategy worked for as long as people hadn't seen through their act, which is exactly why the mainstream media is fading into obscurity, like it is right now, especially with young people.
I was basically saying that I think this is going to be a death blow for the corporate media if Donald Trump wins again. And this is almost the best thing about him winning again. And he was saying, which is a reasonable argument, but I disagree with him. But he was saying, well, no, Dave. I mean, look, last time he was in for 4 years, that was the best thing that ever happened to CNN and MSNBC, and they got a big ratings boost when he was in. But I don't think that's going to work again.
I don't think it's going to work either.
Well, the thing is that so much of that ratings boost was completely driven by the Russiagate nonsense. Right. And what they were telling you at the time was that they had the biggest scandal in the history of the United States of America. Like, you can't overstate how big that story is. I mean, they were telling you,
was true.
Yeah, right. If it wasn't all completely made up, but they're reporting that a hostile foreign power has overturned our election, and the sitting president of the United States of America is in on it. He is involved in a conspiracy with a hostile foreign government. Yeah. Like, that's the biggest scandal in the history of America, and they. For anybody who wasn't aware at the time of how fake and evil the entire system is, they were like, well, look, they got a special prosecutor on the president. I mean, there must be something there. And hey, I just heard the chair of the House Intelligence Committee tell me he's seen the evidence and that he's guilty of this. And you had the former CIA director, John Brennan, saying that Trump and his family are going to be hauled off in handcuffs on television once Mueller's investigation concludes. And so for the regular person, especially for the regular person who really hated Donald Trump, it was pretty easy to get sucked into that.
I think there's a corollary to also which it ties into why this Trump term will be much less of a godsend for media ratings than the last time. It's that Donald Trump was more of a figure and avatar of America's culture wars, not coming from politics. And that means he didn't really have a coalition around him like he does to take on the media establishment when it went after him with accusations like the Russia collusion narrative. perhaps it's safe to say that America as a whole was just not getting used to a president with rhetoric and style as unpredictable and uncharacteristic as Trump's, especially after Obama, so maybe you could say that the media's play up against Donald Trump was a bit more believable back then, but after having gone through the Russian collusion narrative, then lies like the very fine people remark, they were twisted by the media. Trump's reach out to the foreign dictators and a whole lot of other debunked media narratives forever destroyed any credibility the MSM had left. That's why nearly 70% of Americans today say they have very little to no trust at all in the mainstream legacy media, according to a poll by Gallup last month. And that's also reflected in the viewership numbers of major news channels in the country, seeing a steady drop after 2021 when the buzz and hysteria around Donald Trump was just no longer a viable subject matter for coverage. And of course, around the same time when this media censorship was happening, especially on behalf of the government, became much more clear to the people when the Hunter Biden laptop story was systematically suppressed as Russian disinformation, only to be proven true after the election. That was perhaps one of the watershed moments where the media truly dug its own grave. And I think even other government officials.
Let's pause here. No repercussions.
Yeah.
You want to talk about misinformation? We have to censor social media because of misinformation.
Right.
You guys spread misinformation to the biggest news organization, the biggest news audience in the world.
Yeah.
And you did it for 3 years.
Yeah.
You did it for 3 years. And then when it turned out that it wasn't true, you never apologized.
And didn't just turn out it wasn't true, but turned out it was actually
funded by Clinton.
Well, it started as
dossier.
opposition research.
Yeah.
And then the intelligence agencies jumped on that and decided, knowing that it was all decided to use it to frame the sitting president of the United States of America of treason.
Now, you may be wondering, how does the mainstream media even get away with something like this? It's simple. The media takes a page out of Josh Gobel's book, which is to repeat a lie so often that it eventually sinks in and becomes the truth. A study by the Media Research Center in October done on America's media during the election campaign found that news channels at large given Trump 85% negative coverage, while Kamala Harris enjoyed 78% positive press from the media. For a long time, the strategy has worked, especially when most mainstream and social media had left a solid wing bias and control, but with the advent of a platform like X, it almost became a rendezvous for conservatives and libertarians to regroup without fear of cancellation. Over the past 2 years, that's arguably what has allowed Donald Trump to make such a political comeback, but it has also struck the knee of the mainstream media by giving people an alternative viewpoint to measure them by. And the left's response? Well, it seems like they were making the same mistake that got them here, which is creating an ideological bubble around themselves. In the last week, people like Joy Reid, as well as publications like The Guardian, have announced that they'd stop posting their updates on X. I don't think many people are going to miss them, but it's just a continuation of the same strategy that's losing.
Look, I mean, Donald Trump now, he has a real mandate, which is like, this is kind of what's crazy. This isn't 2016 where, you know, he lost by several million votes in the popular vote, but won the counties that were important and just by the skin of his teeth got in. This is like, I mean, the last I looked, he was up by over 5 million in the popular vote.
Yeah, 5 million in the popular vote. And what was it when I went to bed? It was 312.
Yeah.
He had 312 electoral college votes.
Yeah, with still, I think, a few states, Arizona, I think hasn't, finished yet. And so it might even rack up higher than that. But the mandate is like very specific. It's like the basic policies of like, okay, immigration control. Can't just have an open border with no control of who comes into our country. A desire to get out of stupid foreign wars.
Yes.
And obviously improve the economy, deal with inflation, things like that. But he's got a mandate to do that right now, and he's got some great people around him.
I'm sure Donald Trump already realizes that, especially because this is his last term in office, but what's more interesting is that we're in uncharted territory as it regards the country's media landscape. They say the media is supposed to be the government's watchdog. What happens when no one trusts the watchdog anymore? It's certainly going to be more intriguing to observe the interplay of the new social media and the government, because if there's anything this entire election campaign has proven, it's that social media has officially become more important and consequential than legacy television. But let me know in the comments if you agree, because we are also entering an era in American politics that historians of the future will write about as an important transition period that we are living through right now.